Namaskar everyone and welcome to the Gita Satsang. Let us start with Prarthana. By the Guru's grace and the will of Sri Krishna, we have all assembled for this Gita Satsang. May we have their guidance to be able to learn and adopt the things which will help us to grow spiritually. Let us chant the shlokas. Vasudeva Sutam Devam Kamsa Chanuramartanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय हरये परमात्मने प्रणतक्लेशनाशाय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्र येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः रामानुजदया पात्रं ज्ञानवैराग्यभूषणं श्रीमद्वेङ्कटनाथार्यं वन्दे वेदान्तदेशिकं यो नित्यमच्युतपदाम्बुजयुग्मरुग्म व्यामोहतस्तदितराणि तृणाय मेने अस्मद्गुरोर्भगवतोऽस्य दयैकसिन्धोः रामानुजस्य चरणौ शरणं प्रपद्ये. So with prayers at the lotus feet of the Acharyas, let us take our shloka for today. So we had seen up to the 22nd shloka in the last satsang. So today we will take from shloka 23 onwards. So in 23rd shloka, Lord Krishna says, Tam vidya dukkha samyoga viyogam yoga sanjitam sanishchayena yoktavyo yogo nirvinna chetasa. So he's saying, know this state of deliverance from association with suffering to be yoga. So yoga is the state where one is removed from any kind of association with suffering. This yoga must be practiced with determination and with a mind free from despondency. So if we look at what all Krishna has been telling in the previous shlokas just before this, we can see that in the 20th shloka, he talked about how it is important to divert the mind from other activities and pull it towards yoga. In the 21st shloka, he talked about how attaining this state, the higher state of Atmanubhava through yoga, gives ultimate happiness. And once this state has been attained, there is no question of slipping down from that. Then in the 22nd shloka, he talked about how other pleasures are in comparison to the joy of yoga. So when somebody is having Atmanubhava, when they are able to experience that state, then they feel that all other pleasures which they are getting from worldly things in this world, they are only very trivial, they are very small, and it is the joy of Atmanubhava which is the most supreme kind of joy. So now in the 23rd shloka, when Krishna is saying, know this. So know this means all these things. You realize that whatever I have told in the previous shlokas, they show us how yoga and Atmanubhava is the greatest of goals, and how somebody who does yoga abhyasa is able to experience pure happiness with absolutely no tinge of sorrow contaminating that happiness. So this yoga, this Atmanubhava is such that it only gives endless pleasure. So that kind of pleasure which comes from Atmanubhava is not going to end at any point of time. It is not temporary and it is not inferior in quality. It is going to give us the highest level of pleasure which is going to last forever. So here the stress is on the fact that anybody who practices yoga experiences only happiness without any trace of sorrow. To get to this stage, however, the persons have to practice this yoga with happiness and not with sorrow, with determination and not feeling despondent, not feeling depressed. What is the meaning of this? We should not think that if I am going to do dhyana, if I am going to do meditation, then, oh, I have to do, oh, it is required for me to do this. With that kind of a negative feeling, we should not approach it. If we go to it with joy, then we will get to that stage very soon where that yoga abhyasa itself is going to give us pure joy. And that joy will be such that there will be no any dukkha in our life. It is not that situations will not come to cause us pain or sorrow. Situations will come, but we will not be affected by it because our mind will be experiencing the joy which is coming from Atmanubhava. So, understanding that this is the very superior kind of joy which is waiting for us, we should pursue this path of yoga abhyasa with a lot of happiness and not with sorrow. We should not do it as if it is being forced on us, but rather we should willingly and happily be, be interested in devoting time to this kind of meditation. So that is what Krishna is explaining in this shloka. Now, in the next two shlokas, he talks about a little more in detail of how we should conquer the desires which are coming. So, in the 24th and 25th shlokas, we will take them up together. So, he says, Sankalpa prabhavan kaman tyaktva sarvan asheshatah मनसैवेन्द्रियग्रामं विनियम्य समन्ततः शनैः रूपरमेद् बुद्ध्या धृतिगृहीतया आत्मसंस्थं मनः कृत्वा न किञ्चिदपि चिन्तयेत्. So he says, without renouncing without reserve, without any reservations in your mind, without any fears in your mind, if we renounce, if we give up all the desires which are born out of our imagination, which we are creating, those desires are coming because of our wanting to experience those desires. And by completely restraining all our senses and the mind from all directions. When somebody does this, when they give up all kinds of desires, gradually, shanai, very slowly, we will attain tranquility with the help of the buddhi, which is held by the firm resolution. Once we have focused the mind upon the Atma, one should not think of anything else. So, here Krishna is talking about people who have desires. Now, the acharyas explain that there are two kinds of people in this world. One of them is the category of people who think that everything in this world belongs to me. Everything is in this world is there for my pleasure, for my enjoyment. These are the majority of people. There are one small category of people, however, who feel that nothing in this world is actually mine. I'm only passing through this world, so I should not get attached to anything. Those are the people who have vairagya. They are the people who have given up everything. They are the people who are the sannyasis. But most of us, we belong to the category where we think that everything in this world belongs to me. So that leads to this feeling of mamakara, that everything is mine. This is mine. It belongs to me. It is my object, like that. So many times we are even attached to this body. We don't understand in that process of being attached, we don't realize that whatever we are attached to, ultimately all that is going to go away from us, right? And let us say we are attached to so many things in this world. All those things are all temporary. They are all going to go away at some point of time. And this body to which we have so much attachment, so many people spend so much time and energy in beautifying this body, in pampering this body. Ultimately, that body is also going to go away, isn't it? So if we think that all this is mine, it belongs to me, then what happens? Our desire to have good things in this life, our desire to enjoy more and more, that will go on increasing. Whereas if we give up this thought, if we start giving up the thought that of mamakara, that everything is for me, I want to enjoy everything, then when we give up that thought, life becomes easier for us. And it is going to be definitely making the path easy for us to practice yoga abhyasa, for us to practice meditation. Now, here Krishna is talking about desires of two types. He says there is one category of desires which come because of sparsha, because of contact between what? Contact of the sense organs, the indriyas, with the vishaya, with the sense objects. So those are called the sparsha kind of desires. So those desires come because when our sense organs come into contact with the objects, like if I eat something tasty, then I feel I want to eat more and more of that. If it is the weather is very cold and I want to have some source of heat, I have a room heater or something. So then when that touch to my skin, I start feeling that warmth, then I feel I want to enjoy more and more of that. Like this, or if I like to watch a movie, then more I watch movies, more I feel that I'm getting happiness from that. So that desire grows and I want to watch more and more. So like this, these are the desires which come because our senses are coming into contact with the objects, and that spurs those desires more and more. Then there are other kinds of desires which come from the mind. So they are because of our sankalpa, because we feel in our mind that possessing that particular object or thing will give us happiness. So there are many people who feel that they want to have a lot of money in their life, they want to earn a lot of money. Or there are people who feel they want to make a lot of property and they want to have a lot of assets in their life. There may be people who have a desire to, create more and more assets like that. Then there are people who think that they want to enjoy the pleasures of a married life. There are people who want to have children because they think that all these things will give them happiness. So these desires, they are coming because the mind has an intention that it wants to enjoy all these things. So like this, there are two types of desires. All of us have both types of desires. But what Krishna is trying to explain, that whether it is the desire which is because of the indriyas or which is because of the mind, if we want to progress in our sadhana, we have to give up both these types of desires. So to give up these desires means what? We must stop thinking of anything else except the Atma. So that is what he is saying here, that without reserve, without any fear, without any reservations, you renounce completely, give up completely all the desires which are because of your mind, which are because of the sankalpa of your mind, and which are because of the senses. So, when you do this, gradually, very slowly, you will attain that peace of mind. You will attain joy. And such a mind, then, once the desires are gone away, then you can turn that mind to start thinking about the Atman. So, that is the time when you will be able to get into the practice of yoga to undergo, to enjoy Atmanubhava. So, we have seen in the previous shlokas in this chapter how Krishna has been telling one by one what are the steps that we have to take for doing this meditation, for doing this dhyana. So, he has said, choose the right place, choose the right time. You give a specific time when you are not going to be disturbed by anybody. And every day at that time, you practice yoga abhyasa. Then he has said you should have the right asana. It should not be too high, it should not be too low, it should not be too hard, it should not be too soft. Don't lean back, sit straight. Then he talked about how you should close your eyes half closed in such a way that your gaze is fixed on the tip of your nose. If you keep your eyes wide open, you will get distracted by what is happening everywhere around you. If you're keeping your eyes completely closed, then there is a chance that you may fall asleep. But you should keep your eyes half open and look at the tip of your nose, so that at that point your mind is focused. You are not likely to fall asleep. So all these things that he told were about physically what we need to do to create an environment which is conducive for yoga abhyasa. Now, what he's telling here is the mental requirement. What do we need to do mentally so that we are able to focus on yoga abhyasa? So he says, focus your thought on the fact that things in this world don't belong to me. Whenever some thought comes that, oh, I have to do this, I have to get that, I have to buy that, I have to own this, I have to be master of this, like that, remember and keep reminding your mind that all this does not belong to me, all this is not for me, I am only passing through this world, I am not this sharira, so I don't need to enjoy all these things, I am the atma, and this Atma will carry on its journey irrespective of how things in this world around me are. So if we try to focus the mind on that thought, on the thought that only the Atma is permanent, nothing else actually matters, then when we do that, that will give us the right mental situation, it will give us the right mindset to be able to have the Atmanubhava. It will give us the state of mind so that we are able to stay in a good amount of focus during our meditation. And then during that meditation, we will get Atmanubhava. We will experience the joy which is coming not from any external object around us, not because we possess 101 things around us, but because we are getting that joy from experience of our own self. And slowly, what will happen? Initially, we will find that for the time that I am doing meditation, I am getting that joy and pleasure. But as I initially, in the first initial stages, it will be that maybe for some time I'm only struggling to just control my mind, to fix my mind, to keep it focused on the meditation. Initially, it will be a big struggle because our mind is not used to that. But later, as time passes, we may find that, okay, to some extent, for at least a few seconds, a few minutes, we are able to concentrate and focus. The amount of the wandering of the mind has reduced. So then we may find that, okay, we are able to have some amount of focus. Then gradually, what will happen is we will start feeling some joy in that meditation. We will feel some kind of happiness which is bubbling up from within only in that meditation. And that joy will last for the time for which we are in that meditative state. But rest of the time we will not be experiencing that. However, as we keep doing this yoga abhyasa very diligently, as we keep practicing it time and again, we will find that soon, during times other than the meditation, even in other aspects of my life, the joy and calm which I feel during meditation will start showing up in other places in my life also. So, this joy of Atmanubhava will seep into other parts of my life also. So, I will find that overall, the quality of my life experience will improve. I will stop getting worked up for small things. I will stop getting panicked about small things. I will stop having anxiety. I will stop having anger. All those, the instances will start reducing gradually. And slowly, whatever joy I'm having during yoga abhyasa, I will be able to experience that same joy even at times when I'm not actually in a meditative state. So, that is an indication that we are on the right track. Now, in the 26th shloka, Krishna is telling further that this mind, although we are saying we should curb the desires of the mind, curb the desires of the senses, and all that, it's not going to be an easy task. The mind will go on running here and there, but we must bring it back. So, in the 26th shloka, he says, Yato yato nischarati manaschanchalamassthiram tatastato niyamyai tad atmanyeva vasham nayet. Whenever this mind which is chanchala and asthira, whenever the fickle mind and the unsteady mind wanders, we should subdue it. We should put it down. We should suppress it then and there. And we should bring it back under the control of the Atma. We should bring it into the Atma's Vasha. So that is what he is telling here. Now we think that these two words, Chanchala and Asthira, they appear to be synonymous, isn't it? So we think that Chanchala and Asthira means the mind is restless. So we know that by its very nature, the mind is restless. It is keeping on running here and there. So we know that. But why are these two words used separately? It indicates that there is some slight difference in what is being referred to. So when we say chanchala, when we say mind is chanchala, we mean that by nature, by its natural tendency, the mind is restless. So when we say mind is restless, what it indicates is that the mind always jumps from one to another thing. So that is what is known as the chanchala nature, the restless nature of the mind. When Krishna is saying asthira, then very specifically he's talking about the fact that the mind is not sthira. Sthira means the mind which is focused on the Atma. If you say asthiram, then it means the mind which is not able to focus on the Atma. So this manas of ours is not just chanchala, not only does it jump from one to another object, but it is also asthira. So it cannot focus on the Atma. So what will happen when we sit down to meditate? We will find that all the things that we have pushed to the back of our mind, they start appearing at that time. When I sit for meditation only, I will remember all the tasks that I have forgotten to do, or I will start thinking and making a list of things I have to do later in the day, or I will start remembering conversations, or I will start imagining conversations. All these things will happen the minute we sit down and try to quieten the mind and focus it on the Atma. So as our mind runs here and there, it is up to us to recognize that and to bring it back from there at that very point to focus on the Atma. Now, there are many people who think that when we say that we should do meditation, they say, oh, but I cannot concentrate. So they say that I can't concentrate. How will I meditate? See, getting to a state of concentration is the end goal of the meditation. If somebody is able to concentrate, why do they need to meditate? Isn't it? So we should not get confused about that. If we are not able to concentrate, if we are not able to focus the mind, that is by its very nature, the nature of the mind. So naturally, it will not happen. We have to recognize that. What is the solution here? We must keep watching our mind, where it is going, what it is thinking, and we must be alert. The minute my mind drifts away from thinking about the Atma, the minute my mind stops thinking about God or on the object of my meditation, the minute it runs here and there, I have to run behind the mind, pull it back, and say, see, this is wrong for you. You should come back and focus again. Like that, we have to do. So here the Vyakyata has given example. Like suppose many times people play some game and they may involve in that game. People may play cards, for example. It is for relaxation, just to pass time, to have some fun for some time, or to occupy themselves. So that way, to relax the mind, they may play the game. So playing that kind of a game is not very wrong. Why? Because the person is not attached to the outcome, isn't it? You play just for the sake of playing the game because you want a break from your routine. But suppose the same game, you start playing it with the intention of some bet involved in that, or some money is put on stake there. I'm sorry. This kind of factor, it will lead to attachment. So how is it that people get into this gambling and they end up losing a lot of money? Because they think that by playing this they will get so much money. When they don't win that, they want to play another game to get that money. They may lose some money, so they want to get back that money. So like that, the minute that money is come into the picture, then my mind is going to run behind that. So if I want to bring it back, if I want to not get into that activity, what I should do? I should remember examples of how such kind of activity will lead to downfall. I should remember how the Pandavas in the Mahabharata, they had everything. And then when Yudhishthira agreed to that game of dice with the Kauravas, that was the start of their downfall. So I should tell myself actively when my mind says that, oh, let us go and let us get involved with that and let us try to make money out of that gambling game. Then we must tell our mind, see, this is only going to take you on the wrong path. Don't go there. Come back here. Similarly, our mind is such that it wants to talk negative things about other people. It wants to gossip about other people, right? That comes very easily to us. So we will, without our knowledge, we will slip into that habit of complaining about others, of talking bad about them, of gossiping about them, spreading stories about them, and so on. But at that time, what we must do? We must pull our mind back. We must tell our mind. See, there are many examples of people who have done these kind of activities and then they have gone astray. They have gone away from dharma. So it is wrong to talk about other people. You know that in Kannada they say, there is one proverb, they say that Maddaur Papa, Addaur Bayalli. So somebody who's done the papa, the people who talk about it, they will suffer the effects of that papa, of that person about whom they are gossiping. So we must tell our mind all these things. We must remind ourselves that this kind of behavior is wrong. I should not do that. And instead, I should remind the mind that, see, Krishna has told that bodhayanta parasparam, talk amongst yourself, talk with each other, discuss my leelas, talk about my leelas, talk about all my gunas, talk about my greatness. And when you talk about that, that will uplift you, that will keep you on the path of dharma. So we must tell our mind like this. So wherever our mind runs wrong, it runs in the wrong direction. And especially during the process of dhyana, if our mind is running here and there, we must recognize that that is the nature of the mind. One, that it is chanchala, that it is restless, so it is going to jump from one to another thought. And second, it is asthira, so it is not going to be able to focus on the atma. So we must keep that in mind. And whenever our mind, wherever it runs, at that very moment, we should pull the mind back. That discipline that we are exerting in pulling the mind back from wherever it ran to, that itself is the discipline which is going to make our mind purified. So that is the path that we have to follow. So these are all the things that Krishna has explained in these three shlokas. We will stop with this for today, and in the next satsang we will continue with the next shloka. So as we come to the end of this satsang, let us offer kritagnyata, gratitude, at the lotus feet of Sri Krishna and Guru for inspiring us to start and to join this satsang. And let's pray for their blessings and grace to always be on us. Thank you, everybody, for attending the satsang, and we will meet again next week. Namaskar.